October 24th County Board minutes, the approval of the auditor's warrants and claims, and the approval of human services warrants and claims. I would consider approval of the consent agenda as listed.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves on the consent agenda. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, up first for the general discussion part of our agenda is an informational meeting or a presentation from Rick Kroll, Fixed Wireless Operations Manager from Midco. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and other commissioners. Yes, I am Rick Kroll, Fixed Wireless Optimization Manager. This morning, I want to simply introduce Midco and provide details of what we've been doing to provide high-speed internet services to residents of Candiota-High County. Midco deployed equipment on 5 locations in the county back in 2020 and 2021 that you should have on your packets county map of where those locations are. There's several locations that are outside the county but still serve portions of the county as well. Locations were identified to help serve census blocks identified as unserved or underserved by the Connect America Fund. We offer speeds up to 100 by 20, and in some cases we can deploy next generation fixed wireless equipment that can provide speeds anywhere from 3 to 4, and sometimes even up to 500 megabytes per second. I know your Economic Development Commission and broadband committees are working hard on getting fiber to the home in a lot of your townships, but that can take time, money, and resources. In fact, I was on a previous call and heard a story about some residents not getting their grant applications in on time and missed out on their opportunity to get fiber. That's where Midco can assist. There's still a lot of areas that have low speeds and low reliability, and we're looking to partner with you just to simply help raise awareness that we have other options for internet in the area that are unable to get fiber today or in the near future. A lot of our locations have fiber board right to the tower, so residents that have our equipment on their rooftops, other outbuildings, are really only 1 hop away from fiber, or could be onto a tower, and that tower is 1 hop away from fiber. So you're never more than 1 or 2 hops away from a fiber connection. So we would like to continue to work with your broadband committee just to see if there are other areas that we can provide broadband options to residents. And if there are any other community events that you recommend that would be beneficial for us to participate in to bring awareness to Midco, we would certainly appreciate that as well. We're focused on customer service and doing the right thing. It's our aim to stimulate local economic growth and improve the overall quality of quality of life for your residents, and be good stewards of broadband internet and be a partner to the county. Any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a question. You'd said the speeds and I missed it.
Yeah. So right now we offer speeds up to 100 by 20.
Okay.
And in some cases we can deploy different equipment to get higher speeds if that's needed.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I'm looking at your map. Kroll, is that how you pronounce it?
Kroll, yep.
And in the upper shaded area, which would be north of Wilmer, and then there's a trapezoid or something up there that is an area. Can you describe what that means?
Yeah, so the map isn't the greatest, but there's anywhere there's a blue dot or tower looking symbol is where we have a location at. The blue lines is how those towers are connected. We like to have multiple paths for redundancy. So that's basically just kind of a ring. So if we ever had a backhaul, for example, that connects one tower from the other tower, that if that were to say break, you can get internet from a different path. So we have built-in redundancy, just like a fiber line gets cut. You hope to have a redundancy there. So that's basically just to offer better uptime for our customers.
And the intersecting lines, I assume it's Highway 71. There's a B over it. It looks like that's said 71. And then the brown line going from Paynesville to the west. What is that intersecting point? Is that Belgrade?
So the tower that's labeled B is called a New London, Minnesota DOT tower. And then the red line is where we have a fiber trunk line going through the county to connect several regions.
Okay.
But then some of the towers, like you can see, like Tower C has a fiber line ran to it, Tower A, Tower G.
So these are the extent of the towers, or are there additional towers other than these?
That's well, I mean, there's some outside of the scope. I was just trying to capture the towers that are either in the county or bleed into the county that are deployed outside.
Okay, so then, do I understand that this shaded, to me, it's kind of a mint green area, represents full coverage?
Correct. I mean, it's line of sight. So I mean, if there's somebody trucked in a riverbed or high forest area, they have to have line of sight. But where we have our towers deployed, we can go out to 7 to 10 miles from that.
And where you don't have line of sight, is there any workaround on that?
There's different ways. I mean, everybody can get connection. It's just a matter of how creative we can get. If they have a structure in the yard, if there's a barn that we could put a tripod up and get signal to that, and then we could extend that over to the house. We are always researching small other tower structures that we can put in residential yards and stuff, and figure out a way to get it. It's just a matter of height.
What about, go ahead, I don't.
Oh, just a quick question. Could this be up on the screen? Would it work very good? Good. So probably could stay with.
And he's,
Yeah, we got some new technology.
Sure, no problem.
and as the administrator works on that, does anybody else have a question?
Well, I guess I'll ask a question. So I've had people up in my district. I have the northwest corner of the county,
Okay.
up by Sunburg, up in that area that are not receiving any internet. I mean, is there plans for your area to get bigger, or is this as far out as you're going to go?
No, I mean, if there's certainly a need for that, we would certainly look to expand coverage to fill in any of the white areas, or if there is a cluster of, say, 3 to 6 homes that are just in a pocket that are reachable, and it's going to be a while before fiber can get there. Yeah, we'd certainly look to partner with you guys and extend off of our towers to. We bought a dozen utility poles from the electric co-op, and those are 90 feet in length, and we could put up something, on the right of way, or in an intersection, or lease 5 square feet of space from the one of the landowners, and put up a tower and get signal to there, and then rebranch it off to the other residents.
So if I can follow up.
Sure.
So what is your cost? I mean, what are you charging the homeowners?
So right now we have for the first 12 months, for the first year, is $39 a month for that 100 by 20 package. And then after that, it goes up to $59. But then if you sign up for e-statements or paperless billing and all that stuff, you can get that bill down even more.
Commissioner Dwayne.
Okay, so you have the blue lines that was explained. The brown lines, what are those?
Those are our fiber, where we have the fiber running across the county or to a tower.
Okay.
So tower A, C, G, H. Another one by Lake Lillian that I don't have labeled here, but that's fiber to that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, there's a camera right over your head. So if you slide, you can see what you're doing on that there.
Oh, there you go.
You're perfect.
Ah,
There we go.
yeah.
All right. So you've mentioned 20 by 100 a couple of different times. I think it's in 2026. The definition of being unserved is 25 by 100. Are you going to be able to up that to 25 by 100 in your existing or future offerings?
I believe right now it's 25 by 3. You said it was going to be raised to,
2026, the definition in Minnesota, I believe I have that right, is be 25 by 100 is considered served.
okay.
I
100
mean, you're
by,
close at 20 by 100.
probably be 100 by 25, I would think.
Yeah, 100 down and 25 up.
Oh, yeah, they would have to do like probably a firmware upgrade on the equipment and stuff to get those speeds up to increase it from 20 to 25. But
Okay.
yeah, that was something we'd be able to match, especially for our requirements for the CAF funding.
And then going back to the map, you haven't made any change. You said 20 and 21 use when some of these towers went
Yeah,
up.
we've been, that's a thing, when we came in, we were deploying 80 locations each year, and we were just building fast and furious, trying to, kind of came in and out, and we can deploy a tower in, pretty much 2 days. So we've been so focused on getting a lot of it built. Now we got to figure out how to get some customers on these towers. So yeah, that's why it's been a while. It's just we couldn't, just didn't have the resources to come back in, and our marketing has been kind of delayed as well.
So Commissioner Dale Anderson and I were having a conversation before the meeting started about some of these more remote areas of the county that when we have used up all the ARPA funds that we have available, and we're hoping that BEAD fills the border to border bank again, but it's going to be less attractive for some of your bigger internet service providers, ISPs, to go into these areas. Do you see that as a niche for yourself to fill those gaps, or are you going to suffer from the same?
Well, I believe
issues
we
they
can.
have?
I mean, it's like I said, the mint green areas is what we cover today, and if there's, we'd like to at least be an option to those that are in those areas, as an option. And I think there's a lot of residents that simply don't know that we exist, and that's the hard part. And if we already have the equipment deployed, we already have it invested. If we do have pockets, the one thing about fixed wireless is that we're able to respond quickly and with a lot less resources than what it takes to haul fiber, several, 5, 10, 15 miles and stuff to some of these places. So we can do it for a lot cheaper with, not saying comparable speeds, but I heard one internet outfit was offering 100 by 100. When we're offering speeds 100 by 20, and that you just simply need those uploads speeds, whereas you really don't need that symmetrical connection. So you can still run your streaming services and your data connections at home.
I got one more thing.
Commissioner Anderson?
So the problem that I've heard of, and I guess we experience at our place, because we kind of have the same thing with a different company, but as your customer base increases and the usage gets more, are you guys starting to spin and get in trouble with bandwidth? So you're starting to get in trouble at 8, 9 o'clock at night when everybody's starting to get on, or do you got a way to control that?
Yeah, well, we're certainly not overutilizing any towers today, but yes, it's something that we monitor 24/7. And you have a ring of 4 antennas that are pointed 90 degrees in each direction to cover the 360 degrees. You can either add more radios to narrow that width from 90 to 60 and put up additional antennas to compensate for the overutilization, or you put up a second ring in a different frequency to maybe hit the heavy hitters closer to the tower and still able to reach the ones that are further out. So it's a way that you can overcompensate for that.
Sounds good, thanks.
I have one question. So then, thanks, Mr. Chair. Do you limit data then? Once a person, some people they use a lot of data because they're watching movies or doing whatever on there, maybe gaming or whatever. Do you limit data, or so you reduce their speed after a certain period of time, or
No, we don't have any data caps.
okay?
That question sounded like someone coming with 4 little kids. And I'm going to apologize in advance because this is not intended to be any kind of a gotcha question, but I'm wondering how we have a place of business at the intersection of, really, it's right between the tower that you have there and the letter B, and there are I think that tower is exactly 1 mile north of us. And there are a farm place, a residence, there's about 2 or 3 farm places, 2 or 3 businesses, 2 or 3 residences within a mile and a quarter of that tower. And we were told when they went in 2021 that we would not be able to get service from Midco on that when we invited Midco out to do a test to see whether or not we could get service. Has that been resolved?
Could be. And one thing that when we were deploying to some of these areas, was a new experience for technicians that were using, because Midco's a cable and internet provider, and we're doing fiber in other areas of Minnesota as well. So there's one thing that could have been a new technician that was out there that was new to fixed wireless that maybe didn't have the knowledge to be creative on how to get a signal. So I would like the opportunity to get an address for some of those areas and go back and test it again.
I have one last question, Mr. Chair. So, how do you guys see your company, say 5-10 years from now? Do you see yourselves going from this to possibly fiber to the home or premise? Or
Yeah, it's one thing that I've been in this industry for 21 years, and Midco bought our company that did fixed wireless back then with that goal to try to reach some of these areas ahead of time, with the possibility that maybe down the road, if there's feasibility for it to come back and bring fiber to those areas, get out there first, just because it's a way for us, we can deploy to many households very quickly without a fraction of the cost it is to go to home with fiber.
Well, thanks for that presentation. As again, before the meeting, when Dale Anderson and I were visiting, and Commissioner Dwayne Anderson is on the EDC broadband committee, we're going to struggle to the hardest mile is going to be the last mile. And so I think there's an opportunity if we can figure out the technical challenges. Unfortunately, the example that Commissioner Dale Anderson used in Norway Lake Township, not only is it sparsely populated, it's on the glacial ridge. And so clear line of sight is going to be a challenge in Norway Lake Township and some of the other areas in northern Kansas County. So I'm not going to try to solve it here, and I don't think you have the answers right now, but that's what we're going to face when the ARPA dollars and the BEAD dollars have been exhausted.
So we look forward to those opportunities and get some of those addresses to come out there and do some site surveys and see what we can do to provide a solution to those that can't get service today.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
All right, next on the agenda is the resolution 2024-31, adopting the 2025 Glacial Lake Sewer and Water District Water and Sewer. I don't have to read it all. I'll let Corey do that. Welcome, Corey.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Corey Smith. I'm the director out at Glacial Lake Sanitary Sewer and Water District. I'm here before you today, like Roger said, for resolution 2024-32, and this is to adopt the 2025 Glacial Lakes sewer and water utility rates, meter charges, usage fees, and annual internal operating assessments for non-city users. Earlier this year, once we received bids for our phase 2 project at the wastewater plant, Eilers updated our rate study to reflect our phase 2 as-bid project costs. We did that to ensure the long-term fiscal health of our utility funds, and then also their update included our capital improvement plan. For 2025, Eilers recommend an increase in our capital fund, which is Fund 29, by 4%, and our operating fund, which is Fund 28, by 6.25%. Discussions with the Glacial Lakes Commission and the Budget Committee resulted in agreement with Eilers' recommendation of the 4% for capital and 6.25% for operating. And then these rates are shown in the attached Exhibit A. In your packet, I've included the 2025 budget summary. It's the one with the blue header on it. On the top left side, underneath meter usage, and special assessments. The first line is special assessments. Again, this is for, or the dollar amount that you see there, $732,780. Once that is received, that goes to our capital fund, Fund 29, which is the debt service of the plants. The next one, fixed meter fees. That again is capital fund 29, debt service. $1,660,185.98. The next line is O&M usage fee for wastewater. This is our operating fund, which is Fund 28. This is for the day-to-day operations for the wastewater plant. The total for that is $1,491,225.04. And then last on the list there is our O&M usage fees for the water plant or the water side. And that total is $523,164.16. So again, the O&M, that is that revenue comes off the rate per 1,000 gallons that customers use. So if you add all them up, this brings our total 2025 budget to $4,407,335.16. Next on the summary sheet is a list of our 2025 projects. As you recall, the Phase 2 project is almost a 2-year project, so obviously that is our top priority. And then below that are some Glacial Lakes, just some quick facts about our system. The next page that you see is Exhibit A. This lays out our sewer and water charges for 2025. As you can see, the larger the meter that you have, the larger your monthly base fee is. And just to put this into perspective, vast majority of our residents have a 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter. That's obviously the lowest price on there. And then also the largest meter in our whole system is a 4-inch meter. On September 24th, at the Glacial Lakes Commission meeting, the commission recommended forwarding this resolution to the county board for consideration. And then with that, it is staff's and the commission's recommendation to approve and adopt the budget as laid out in resolution 2024-31, along with the rates shown in Exhibit A.
So you've heard recommendation for staff to proceed approving resolution 2024-31. I would entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
Mr. Chair, I'll move resolution number 2024-31.
Commissioner Gardner moves on 2024-31. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Now let's, if there's any questions or comments.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So what would that make, say, the average family of 4, what do you think they pay a month?
You know, we do get this question a lot of residents. So we're very seasonal, so it's hard to say. So a lot of our residents, they only come on weekends, you know, to the lakes, a lot of our lake systems. But if you were within the cities or even a year-round resident, I would expect to see you would add your base fee, which is $18.14 plus your $3 O&M charge. And then depending on what time of the year for water, we have a summer rate and a winter rate that are different. So there's another $8. So you're looking $100 or so, depending on how much you use, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
That's one thing that the homeowners can control is the less you use, the less you get charged.
Yeah.
You do have base fees that you do get charged no matter if you use a drop.
Okay.
And one of the things to keep in mind is that City of Spicer, City of New London, and I think KNUI is also,
Correct. Yep.
we sell to them wholesale.
Correct. Yeah.
They set their rates, so it isn't the commission that necessarily sets the retail rate for the residents in those 3 communities. And then they're the only ones besides Green Lake that have water, correct?
Correct. There's a little stretch on the north side of Nest Lake by the Catholic church up there that has water, and 69th Street that has water.
Otherwise, the vast majority of, on the other lakes and on the district are just sewer
Yep.
customers, so. It's pretty complex, but, if I hear it often enough, I begin to understand it, so. And Corey does a great job of laying it out, so. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Corey. Go ahead. You need to run up and get it? Oh, yeah, go ahead. We're gonna take a really, well, we don't need to take a break. Administrators are gonna pick up some technology there that will allow us to do some screen share. And while she does that, if Michelle Hanson, as she's already on her way up to the podium to give us a presentation on the upcoming election. I think we have one more meeting. Yes, we do. The day of the election will be our next meeting. So it's coming on fast. For some, maybe not fast enough, but it'll be here soon.
All right. Good morning. My name is Michelle Hanson.
Could you just pull it down? Thank you very much.
Coordinator for the elections and deputy auditor treasurer. So this morning I'm just going to bring you a brief update on the elections, where things are at, some highlights of some legislative changes, and some information regarding polling places. So I just wanted to start off with some key dates. Our absentee voting season began on September 20th. That week and leading up to it was a very busy week in our office. On September 20th itself, we sent out approximately 950 ballots. In addition to that, we sent out another 70 ballots, either by email or by mail, to our uniformed and overseas citizens, our military, our UOCAVA we refer to. Ballots are mailed to all permanent absentee voters, and that's something new that I'll touch on a little bit later with the legislative updates. But that's something that we're continuing to do daily throughout Election Day. And then we're also continuing with the UOCAVA, the overseas and military voters. Those applications come in daily as well. And so we continue to send out to those voters, as well as online requests and in person. So it's been a very busy couple of weeks so far, and we only expect that to continue. As of yesterday morning, 11 a.m., I ran the report, and we had mailed out, or issued, I should say, 3,498 ballots. So 3,500 ballots in just a matter of a couple of weeks. And 87 of the UOCAVA, the overseas and military ballots. Today is the last day for pre-registration. This is basically so that your name shows on the roster, if you will, prior to Election Day. So you don't need to register on Election Day. You're already pre-registered. You are still able to register after today. It would happen either in our office during the absentee voting period or at the polls. Starting tomorrow, all ballots in the mail ballot precincts, and I've listed them there, Arctander, Mamre, Edwards, Roseland Townships, and the city of Lake Lillian. Those 5 precincts have decided to become mail ballot precincts, and ballots are mailed to all registered voters in those precincts. So sometimes you get some questions, people asking about when am I going to get my ballot if I'm in a mail ballot precinct. The reason being we pick that date is we pick it to be close to the last date to pre-register so that we can get the most voters, most registered voters that we can in a one-time shot. And then after that, we'll continue to monitor any registered voters that maybe came up after we sent the file to our vendor to mail those out. We will continue to mail those out to those voters. So if you have voters in your districts, or maybe people listening online, if you're in a mail ballot precinct and you know you're registered, give us a couple of days. Unfortunately, we're at the mercy of the mail service. But those will be mailed tomorrow on the 16th. If you haven't gotten it yet, let us know. We can double check to make sure that you are on the list and go from there.
May I stop you there for just a second?
Yeah.
That question came to mind. So in those precincts where it's mail-in ballot only,
Yes.
um, and today is the last day to pre-register. So if they don't pre-register today, which by the way is clearly an online option,
Mhm.
but then their only option would be to come into the county office building and register, correct?
Correct. They can still submit a registration online. However, they'll get a notice of late registration once they pass today's deadline. And we'll send them a letter and follow up with them that way. Otherwise, they can certainly come into our office. Yes.
But they can't come into your office to vote.
Yes, I can.
Yes.
They can't.
Yes.
Okay, even though they live in Lake Lillian or whatever.
Yes.
Or can they just drop their ballot off?
So they can vote in our office.
Okay.
A lot of people have concerns about mailing a ballot back. They've gotten one in the mail from us and they have concerns about putting it back in the mail. Is it going to get there? Will it get there in time? And so on. So they can bring their ballot to our office and drop it off. The one thing I will tell you is that you should only bring your own ballot in. However, you can bring a spouse's in or something like that, but you're limited to bringing only, I believe it's 3 other person's ballots in. So there is a limit and you will have to sign that you're acting as an agent dropping off someone's ballot for you. So, you can't go through your neighborhood and in the township and gather everybody's ballots and drop them off. So there is a limit on that. The other thing that is new since 2020, and I believe we've discussed it in previous updates, but we no longer use our drop box outside of our building for dropping off ballots. And we do have that clearly marked. That is not an acceptable drop off point any longer for dropping off ballots.
All right, sorry to interrupt
Nope,
your
you're just
But-
oh,
thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to really emphasize what you said, that you can register, but even at the same time, after you're done registering, you can vote at that moment
yes.
in the office, instead of taking the ballot backs and then mail it in or bring it in later. And some people may want to look at it in
We
more
do
detail.
have portable booths set up in our lobby
Yeah.
that people can utilize, or tables with
Okay.
some privacy areas to fill out your ballot. So if you want to just do it right there and leave it with us, you can certainly do that. Yes.
May I follow up, Mr. Chair? Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the past, and maybe I've missed it, are there going to be sample ballots in the newspapers that people could look at ahead of time?
So there is a change
Okay.
to the sample ballot publishing requirement. We don't any longer publish the actual sample ballot. There's a full page ad that will be coming out, and I forget the deadline for that. But listing all of the information, here's where you can come to vote, here's your polling places, here's the information on the ballot and so forth. I will have a slide here later too that shows where you can find that information online as well.
Thank you.
so I'm going to allow Dwayne Anderson to ask his question and then apologize because this is all information you're probably covering if I'd have just waited.
Sure.
Okay.
But we hear it twice, then we can.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a couple questions. In the past elections, this has been a long time when it first kind of started. I was down in the Lake Lillian area as an election judge, and people would come in, they wanted to vote at our precinct, voting location, which was in town, but since the town wasn't voting, they couldn't vote there. And they didn't realize they went to mail only voting. And so they didn't really realize what that looked like when it came in the mail. And I think a lot of them thought it was junk mail and just threw it away. So has that been remedied somehow so people can recognize that it is an actual ballot for voting?
So that is one of the suggestions that we do make to the cities and townships that decide to go mail ballot, is that they do need to give some education to their voters and let them know that they are in a mail ballot precinct, and so they will be receiving a ballot by mail. I'm kind of coming in late to the game here, so I wasn't involved when some of these first started mail ballot precincts. But I know that's something that we have talked with them about, and we do give some education in our office when we have people come in and ask or call or so on and so forth. Always keep in mind that our office is considered the polling place for those voters. And so if they don't, if they don't receive their ballot in the mail, and they want to still vote and they're in one of those mail ballot precincts, they can come to our office and we act as their polling place. So we can handle it there for them. Or like you say, sometimes people do get those ballots, or even multiple applications from some of these voter groups that send these out, and they just believe it to be junk mail. And or they're concerned that maybe it's not the same ballot they would get if they came on election day. And so we can assist them in our office too.
So I think you answered my second question then. So if they threw it away and didn't realize it, you know, I mean, they just, but they still want to vote, they can come into the office and vote.
Yes.
There is a way to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and again, in a further slide, one of the things that we do when they come in and fill out an application to request to vote is we have to verify that they are registered, first of all, at the address that they currently live at, all of those good things. But then we also can see if a ballot has been issued to them. And so if a ballot has been issued to them already, we know that. You know, we can do some further questioning. Hey, did you get one in the mail? They may say, I thought it was junk, so I destroyed it. I threw it away. In our system, that we do have to account for those ballots, and so we can go in and mark that ballot as lost or spoiled. The labels that come with their information on it for their signature envelopes and so forth, the parts that they return to us do have unique ballot numbers. And so if they would get home and turns out they didn't destroy it, and now they try and vote again, it will be flagged and it will not be allowed to be received again by using, there's a barcode as well as numbers on those labels. So it is one of our security features, if you will. So in the off chance somebody does get two ballots in a scenario like we just talked about, only one will be accepted. So,
And I just have one other comment. I was election judge for many years, and I was never so nervous as when we brought in the ballots at night to be counted to make sure we did it right. So you guys do a good job.
thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up what you said, thank you for saying that, because I've had several people ask me that question, that they're worried about people voting twice.
Sure, sure.
And I assure them they weren't, but it's better coming from you as well.
Right. One of the other things that I will mention too, somebody comes in and votes early in our office or mails in a ballot, an absentee ballot early, and then they try to go to the polls. There again, that information will already be out there that they have already been voted. So only one ballot can be accepted per voter. So there are those safeguards. Moving on to October 18th, which is this Friday, we have what's called direct absentee balloting, and that's where you vote by absentee still, vote early in our office. However, instead of putting the ballot back in secrecy envelopes and signature envelopes and so on and so forth, you can take it just like you would at the polls and feed it directly into the tabulator. So we still do all of the checking ahead of time to issue that ballot, make sure only one ballot's been issued and so on and so forth, like we've just talked about. However, instead of returning it to us via those envelopes and going through absentee ballot board approval or rejection, it goes directly into the machine, just like it would on election day. So some people choose to do that because they get the more of the feel, just like they're at the polls, if they can't be there on election day. So that we will generally see quite an uptick of absentee voters in the office beginning on Friday. And that goes through election day in our office. And then our next important date, obviously, is on November 5th for election day. We do have some extended hours. Some of these were brought on by some recent legislation. October 26th, which is a Saturday, 2 Saturdays prior to the election, we're open from 9 to 3. October 29th, which is a Tuesday evening, we're open until 7 p.m. I think part of the theory on some of this is that we catch some of the people that are working 9 to 5 that can't be here on election day, kind of some odd hours, or people that work shift work, what have you. Again, the following Saturday and Sunday, both were open 9 to 3. The 4th, the day prior to the election, Monday, we're open until 5 p.m. And then on election day, we are a polling place, as I said. So we are open from 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. We will have staff as early as 6 a.m. in our office answering phone calls and so forth. Myself and a couple other staff may be running out to polling places, troubleshooting if there are any issues with machines and so on. And then our staff, those that aren't still there at 8 o'clock, will be coming back to finish up all of the election night duties that we have in our office here. So it is a very busy day, lots of long hours. Absentee voting, we've probably talked about several of these points already, but sometimes it can be referred to as early voting. This can be done, as I said, in person or by mail. The starting date is 46 days prior to the election. Again, it requires that the voter complete an absentee ballot application, and the absentee ballot application and information can be found on the Secretary of State's website, mnvotes.org, or I'm sorry, .gov is the website where you can go to find that information. The voter's information is verified by our SVRS, our statewide voter registration system, and this is a database maintained by the Secretary of State's office. There are also updates from several of our state departments, Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Health, Department of Corrections. All of the counties and local election jurisdictions are constantly making updates to this as well. So it's a fairly real-time maintained information. And then, as I said before, it keeps track of all ballots that have been issued to voters, a unique ballot ID number on each application and label that goes out with the ballots to allow for only one ballot to be issued and returned by a voter. Like I said, it keeps track of the dates we issued ballots, when it was sent, when it was received, when it was accepted, and so on and so forth. Our absentee ballot board meets regularly every 2 to 3 days. Every 2 to 3 times a week at this point, and closer to the election, it may be as often as every day to review those ballots that have come in for absentee. And they check things like the signature, the ID numbers provided on the signature envelopes, and they match those against the applications. Witness requirements. When you vote by absentee, you need to have a witness. If you do it in our office, we serve as your witness. If you do it at home and mail it in, a spouse or another registered voter in the state of Minnesota can be a witness, or college students can also have a witness, maybe at college. That can be another Minnesota registered voter or a notary public as well. And it keeps track of the ballot accepted or rejected. And if your ballot should be rejected by the absentee ballot board, we do notify you immediately that same day through the mail, typically. When we get right up to the deadline, we do notify them whatever means we have, phone number, email address, and so forth, give them the option and the opportunity to fill out a replacement ballot if their ballot was rejected. One thing to note is all the ballots that come into our office, once they've been accepted in our office, they are kept securely locked up until after the election. So they are in a secure container inside of a locked office when the absentee ballot board is not actually physically looking at them. And then at the point that they get run through the machine, the tabulating machine, then they do get locked again after that. So they are always under lock and key. So that security question.
So could I ask?
Go ahead.
Okay, so when you guys meet every, like twice a week or whatever, at that point, are they run through a machine, or is it do you wait till election day?
So there is a time period, and this is not my forte. One of the gals in the office is in charge of our ballot board, and she could tell you right off the top of her head. I believe it's 18 days, but don't quote me on that. I'm not positive of the exact date, but there is a period of time after which the ballots can be run through the machine, through the tabulator. So until that time, they are kept with the envelopes and kept, in the secrecy envelopes so that they haven't been counted, if you will, until that point. When that time comes, then we can start to feed them through the tabulator. So there is a deadline, and that's all set by statute.
And once they're run through, that a person can't come in and say, "Hey, I changed my."
Correct.
But before then, can they change their mind?
They can if they haven't been run through the tabulator.
Okay.
yes.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm. And then we do daily reconciliation of the ballots that are accepted and rejected throughout the whole process. I alluded to this slide a little bit ago. We generated some QR codes that we have at our counter, and I believe it's been posted on the Facebook site for the county. But if you're familiar with QR codes, you can put your phone up in front of that, scan this QR code, and it brings you right to the website where you can find out what's on my ballot. You enter your address, and it brings up the specific ballot for your precinct. It'll show you who's on the ballot, what races, and all those sorts of things.
I'm gonna do it as you.
Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, this is going to be on YouTube, and it is now, so that they could actually scan it on YouTube.
Yes.
We're set.
Yep.
What
We-
can I have a
yes.
follow? You're also, just to follow up, you're saying that these things are kept in a secure place. Can you elaborate a little bit more? Because I understand there's many checks and balances about, not just one person can oversee all that.
Yep. So when our absentee ballot board meets, it's a bipartisan ballot board. So they're in teams of 2 plus one of our staff overseeing. And so we do need to make sure that we have party balance when we're dealing with the ballots at all times. But once they have reviewed those ballots and either accepted or rejected them, when they're done with them, they go into a locked container with seals, numbered seals on them, and then those are locked within locked office as well. And so every time they go back to that container to open it, to add more to it, to take those out, maybe to run through the machine, those seal numbers are recorded on a log, and then those are checked. So it's always a check and balance system. Okay, and then we likewise made a QR code for helping you find where you vote. So same sort of scenario, it brings you to this website where you enter your address and it tells you your polling place. So a little bit about our polling locations. We do have 48 precincts in the county. One of those is our airport. Within the city of Willmar, there are 13 precincts, 12 cities in our county, and 24 townships. So it amounts to 32 polling locations plus the county auditor's office. 25 of those are standalone locations, so your bigger townships or cities have their own. 7 of those are combined. So some of the smaller townships and cities may be combined into one location. A few legislative highlights from the 23-24 sessions. One of the things you may have heard about is the felony conviction and restoration of voting rights. Years ago, when you signed the oath, you're signing that you're 18, you're not a felon, or your felony or your rights have not been restored, then you're not allowed to vote. They've changed that now. Instead of are you a felon and your rights have not been restored, then you can no longer vote, to are you incarcerated? So it makes it a little bit easier on the election judges at the polling place. If they're standing in front of you, they're not incarcerated. So it makes it a little bit less gray area, if you will, at the polls. That went into effect of July of 23. Another item was pre-registration for voters 16 and 17-year-olds. So when they get their driver's license, they can submit a voter registration. Then it gives an opportunity for their information to be verified prior to them turning 18. They do not go on the roster, if you will, and they're not allowed to vote until they're 18, but all that legwork in the background has been done. So when they turn 18, they're good to go. So that went into effect June of 23. Another thing that went into effect this year was the permanent absentee voter list. There is an updated certification of voter eligibility. For this, and I just copied some of this information. Again, it addresses the I'm not currently incarcerated for conviction of a felony offense, so that's a change from previous. I am 18, I'm a US citizen, those sorts of things. And then the certification also has a box on it, so that you'll see this at the slip that prints from our poll pads if you're doing this on the election day or on voter registration forms and so on and so forth. Also, the applications for absentee ballots, it does ask, are you a citizen and will you be 18 before election day? If you've checked no to either one of those, you cannot complete this form. You can't move on, if you will. So currently, just some statistics, we do have 516 voters on the permanent absentee voter list as of yesterday. So that means every time there is an election that they are eligible to vote in, we are obligated to mail them a ballot.
So if, excuse me, if, for example, a college student going to school up in the valley or in Wisconsin, or give it a name, registers to vote and get an absentee ballot, will they remain on that permanent list then going forward, regardless of where they live?
Yes, a couple of, well, yes and no. A couple of things with that. So they are on the list until they request to be removed, or they become their registration becomes challenged.
Because they may have moved to a different jurisdiction.
Right. If they moved and they didn't update their address with us, we try and mail them a ballot and it's returned by the Postal Service as undeliverable. That is one of the criteria where we can remove them from that list.
Okay.
Automatic voter registration is another item, and this becomes in effect when they have a new or a renewed driver's license or ID card, have an updated name or address. There is an option for them to decline this, but it's an automatic thing, but they do have a way to opt out. It's verified through the normal checks, and updates are provided by the normal state agencies, just like any other voter registration. This went into effect in June of this year. Another item is protections for election judges and other election officials. You may hear more and more on the news. Unfortunately, sometimes election judges, election officials are becoming targets of crimes, harassment, those sorts of things. And so there now is some legislation that protects election judges and election officials from that. And those went into effect in June of 23. And then some increased appropriations from the state government and regarding elections to help with some costs regarding needing to upgrade some systems or equipment, or campaigns regarding restoration of rights for formerly incarcerated individuals, that sort of thing. So there are some more funding available to us yearly. That was a lot of information in a short time. So any other questions we haven't touched on?
Clearly it was, and in spite of all of that, we may still have some questions. Commissioner Berg.
Yes, thank you. Before I ask my question, I want to say thank you and all your staff, and the flexibility that you're trying to make it possible for people can vote. I mean, you just look at all the extra hours you have to put in.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable that the night of the election, what you have to go through, and afterwards as well. And one of my questions is, I heard some concerns. Some people think, well, we shouldn't have all these electronics. There's concerns about them. They should be hand counted. And I believe one state is going to try to do that. Now, we don't do that, but could you just share that how we do check afterwards? And
Sure. I think what you're referring to is we
Yes.
have what's called a post-election review.
Yep.
And this is, separate. It's not because of a contested race or anything. This is a normal thing that we do after each state general election. Randomly, 3 precincts are chosen by the canvassing board to be hand counted. And this is not to change any of the results of the races, but it is to basically validate the accuracy of our tabulators. And so that is something that's done. We bring in typically 2 teams of 2 election judges, and those ballots are brought out from the secured area and hand counted for particular races, and then verified against the results from the tabulators. And so rarely are we off, and if we are, it's usually a matter of physically looking at the ballot and seeing the voter's intent versus how it was counted through the tabulator. By that I mean if you feed your ballot into the tabulator and you don't fill in the oval next to the name, the machine is not going to read that as a vote. If we're physically looking at the ballot, you maybe didn't fill in the oval, but you circled the name. And we can see by voters' intent that that was your intention, was to vote for that party. So typically that's the only discrepancies that we find when we do this hand count.
Other questions or comments? I still have a couple. You mentioned the absentee ballot board that is meeting 2 to 3 times a week now and probably daily in the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
Who makes up that board and how is it chosen? Is it all staff people from your department?
No. We have one of our full-time staff oversees that. We also have 2 temporary or part-time election staff that fill in on that board. Otherwise, these are certified election judges. Some of them may work at the polls on election day as well, or they may have in previous years. These are just trained election judges. They go through the normal training and then they go through additional training to be on the absentee ballot board. And so, like I mentioned before, it is party balanced. So Sherry in our office that coordinates the absentee ballot board has all the information so that she knows who can work with who and who can't work with who based on party balance and so on and so forth. So typically we have anywhere from 1 team of 2 up into 3 or 4 teams of 2, depending on the volume of ballots that they need to go through each day.
And do they need to come in person or are they able to do that by Zoom or whatever? But
No,
you do have rotating teams, so it's not.
They do
the
have
same team.
rotating teams, but they come in person. They physically look at the ballots and match the ballot envelopes up with the applications to look at those things we talked about, the signatures, their identification numbers, the registrations, all that sort of information.
Very good. And what my last question, I don't know, but can you talk just a little bit about automatic registration? I think it went into effect or goes into effect next year for when young people get their driver's license. Am I
Yep.
understanding that?
Yep, so we do have some of that already.
Okay.
And so the automatic voter registration, we have been seeing a lot more of registrations coming in, like you said, when folks get their new or updated driver's license. So that information comes over from DVS, and part of the information, especially with the real ID and the enhanced licenses, then they're able to check the citizenship status as well before it comes over to us. So we are seeing more and more people automatically registered because of that. It is kind of nice because people will come into the office and say, well, I've moved. I don't know that I'm registered at my current address. And we can look it up and find that maybe they have already been because of the driver's license registration. So.
Thank you. Well, go ahead.
I think this can go on and on. I'll try to make this my very last question. I have a couple questions. Can you just elaborate a little bit on poll watchers that would and what process that would involve? And I also had a question about judges. Are you having any problems? Do we have enough election judges? And also, it's my understanding, and just verify that there has been discussion about safety and security of the judges and the polling places with the people who should be involved in that.
Sure. Okay, so go back to your first question. As far as poll watchers, in Minnesota, we don't have poll watchers.
Where would
We
you
have
call
challengers. And the difference is challengers have to be there for a particular reason, and they're typically appointed by a particular party or a candidate. They can basically they watch, so people confuse them with poll watchers, but they can watch and they can contest the eligibility of a voter to vote. Now, that has to be done in writing and it has to be by personal knowledge. So they can't just randomly pick every voter that comes in the door and challenge them. They have to have some personal knowledge as to why this person may or may not be eligible to vote. So that covers that. They can't interfere with the voting process. They can't have access to the poll pads, the electronic rosters, or the tabulators. So they have to remain so many feet away from the machines and not disrupt the voting process. So that covers those. Your second question, remind me again, I'm sorry.
About the security and safety, and do you have enough judges?
Okay, so the security and safety, that is one of the main topics we talked about this year with our election judges. We do our training on a 2-year cycle. So once they're trained for 2 years. And we do some updates if necessary in between time. But one of the things that we did discuss with them, with the increased potential for harassment or targeting, if you will, of election judges and election officials, we felt it necessary to bring some of that information to light. And so one of the things that we did was work with our local county sheriff's department and police department. And they actually came to our in-person election judge training and discussed some sort of things that may or may not happen, what if scenarios, and if this happens, how are you going to handle it? And we went through some information regarding that. Some simple things as far as if I need to call 911, what happens? Where does it go? Who answers the phone? Who's going to respond? All those sorts of things. So we went through that. There also has been lots and lots of questions ever since the permit to carry program has come into Minnesota about bringing guns into the polling place. And so they went through with our election judges information regarding that, the do's and don'ts, when can you request that they not bring one to the polling place and so on. What buildings are posted and what the requirements are for posting and those sorts of things. So we've talked about those types of security. The other security as far as keeping our election equipment and our supplies secure. All of I mentioned some seals earlier when talking about ballots and so on. All of our equipment is tested in our office and then goes out with a seal on it as well. And so our election judges know when they receive this equipment, when they pick it up, before they deploy it, it's all been sealed. We have a certification sheet with those seal numbers on it. Those are parts of the information that they check throughout the day, at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, to make sure nothing's been tampered with. So those are some physical security things that we have in place. And then as far as election judges, the cities and townships in our county are the ones that do the hiring for the election judges. And so we don't directly do the hiring other than for our absentee ballot board. I'm hearing that, yes, it is getting harder to find election judges. I think sometimes some of our maybe younger people don't feel the obligation or the duty, if you will, as maybe some of the older folks do. People are busier, raising families and working jobs and all that sort of thing. So some of that is due to that. Some people just don't want to be involved. And I understand that too. But yes, we are having a hard time. The other issue is finding maybe judges with particular party balance in some of our locations. So that has been a challenge, I believe, for the township and city clerks and so on and so forth. So if you have interest in being an election judge, there is information on the Secretary of State's website. You can fill out an interest form and direct it to us, and we'll put you on the list for the next round.
Okay.
So.
Well, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I mean, it's been a vigorous, robust discussion. I appreciate all you do, and I think it's very obvious that you take this seriously. We all take it seriously for our most honored privilege as a U.S. citizen. So, thanks for all you do, and we look forward to being done with this in 2 weeks. So,
Thank you.
So, thank you again. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. We will reconvene the Kennewaga County Board of Commissioners. Next up on the agenda is a final payment and acceptance for crack filling. Mr. Odens.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm Mel Logan, Public Works Director, Kennewaga County. The first item that I've got is a final payment and acceptance of our maintenance crack filling that we do every year. This year we did 27 miles, split out over the course of pretty much the roads in the entire county. I do have a map included in your packet. Northwest Asphalt out of Thief River Falls was the low bid, and the bids were received on March 27. And so what you've got in front of you is a request for final payment, which is basically the final retainage, which represents 0.5% of the original contract, which was $224,785. So my recommendation is to accept the project and authorize final payment in the amount of $11,389.30 to Northwest Asphalt and Maintenance out of Thief River Falls.
So you have heard staff recommendation regarding the final payment and acceptance. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to accept the project and make final payment to Northwest Asphalt and Maintenance.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on the payment request. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. You may proceed with.
Mr. Chair, the next one is we have to do a resolution 2024-33, and that supports us to make a federal trail application for the work we're going to be doing on the box extension of the Middle Fork on Highway 40. This is all part of a subset of the Sibley Trail from New London out to Sibley State Park. And that project has been worked on state funds to do the trail. And then we also are doing the extension with DNR funds. And so what the DNR was able to do was secure federal dollars in the amount of $120,000. And so they would like to have us be the applicant because it would federalize the box extension, but it doesn't federalize the entire 3.5 mile trail, if that makes any sense. And so they basically want to give the county the $120,000 because
Maybe in the DNR.
the DNR or the feds. I mean, they would basically transfer the application to Kennewaga County. So because we can deliver it next year, and I think that's the main part. We don't want to expire the funds. So what we will have is we have previously $300,000 in DNR funds that we applied for, and then we've also got $120,000 now that we would get in federal funds to complete this project. And if you recall, it would be the project consists of extending the box culvert at the Middle Fork, just south of 40. We would provide a small spot for parking, an access to the trail, and then a small security fence. So it's all part of the subset of the Sibley State Park, but we're doing our part. So my recommendation is to pass resolution 2024-33, which supports the county making federal trail application to receive this money.
So you've heard staff recommendation on resolution 2024-33. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I so move that we do resolution 2024-33.
Mr. Dale Anderson moves on 2024-33. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Chair. Oops, sorry. You
Go ahead.
can go ahead.
I'm going to give it to Mr. Berg. He's closer to me. I heard it quicker.
Yep.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Well, it looks like after almost 15 years, we're making a little bit of progress each year. I mean, not every year, but we're moving forward, slowly but surely. So hopefully one year we see some construction going through and completing that last phase.
Well, our boxes we anticipate it's scheduled for a March or April letting of next year. So ours, we have all the funding to do ours.
Right.
Ours will be done.
Then we have to actually build a trail between.
You'll be able to get up and over the river.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, as Administrator Baker makes it up to the podium, our next item on the agenda, she has the next couple items actually, is the resolution 2024-32 to reappoint the county assessor.
Yes, good morning, Kelsey Baker, Candioi County Administrator. As the board chair indicated, this resolution is to reappoint the county assessor by statute 273.061. We're required to appoint the county assessor for a 4-year term. And so we would be reappointing Val Spoor as of January 1, 2025. And so I'm happy to report on this resolution. I think Val does a phenomenal job. The county just went True County for assessing so that everything is handled within. She does phenomenal work. She stays on top of her job duties and so forth. And so today I would be asking for the board to approve resolution 2024-32.
You've heard staff recommendation on resolution 2024-32. I'd entertain a motion for approval of that resolution.
Mr. Chair, I move resolution 2024-32.
Commissioner Gardner moves on 2024-32. Do I hear a second?
I'll make that motion for a
Commissioner-
second. I mean,
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any questions or comments? I would agree. That's not an easy job at times, especially when we do truth and taxation sometimes, and also Board of Equalization. But Val does a great job, and her staff along with hers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries. You may proceed.
The next resolution requesting for approval is to authorize execution of a broadband development agreement. This is Federated Telephone Project with the townships of Colfax, Dovry, Lake Andrew, Norway Lake, and St. John's. The attorneys that we have hired to review all of these agreements, Kennedy and Graven, they have reviewed it. Also, Federated Telephone's attorneys, I just received the text as I was standing up here from Kevin Byer, that their attorneys reviewed it and didn't have any issues either. And so this project is for the 2.4 million. Construction has started within St. John's Township. Federated has secured 2 1-acre parcels for buildings that they are required to have close to the project. So that's a positive thing as well. That 2.4 million is out of the ARPA dollars that were committed to broadband, which was the 6.2 million, which is in the document attached. I just want to touch on the other documents. There's Exhibit B, C, and D. Those are required by our auditors and to include within the agreement. So if you had time to peruse those or just review them a little bit, there's a lot of information in there. They really go over the purpose with the Coronavirus Act and the American Relief Plan dollars and what they're supposed to be used for, and the board is signing off on that. And so I just wanted to include those, that those are being also approved today when you approve the agreement. So today I would be asking for approval to approve the agreement for those townships with Federated Telephone.
You have heard staff recommendation on approving the broadband infrastructure development agreement. I'd entertain a motion to approve that or to move that forward.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Another step forward. All right. Up next, Planning Commission recommendations. Mr. Van Dyken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Eric Van Dyken, County Zoning Administrator, here with 3 action item requests here from the Planning Commission meeting of October 7th. Last week, Monday, the Planning Commission met and considered 3 requests for conditional use permits. The first is as follows. It's for a 200-foot cellular tower, basically over on the Chippewa, Candioi County line in Holland Township. It actually is near another tower. There's a tower just across the road in Chippewa County, and Verizon has been on that tower for quite some time and has found it to be at this point economically unfeasible for them to continue to locate on that tower, and so they're looking for another tower. This tower is significantly shorter than the one near it. The one across the road is a guide tower, pushing 500 feet, I believe. There was a little bit of concern here and discussion throughout the meeting on voltage relating to lightning strikes, and the Planning Commission kind of had asked that staff look into that question a little bit, and I had hoped to do that before the board here, and have had some opportunity to do that. I've spoken with a couple different representatives. Spoke with the again with the representative of the tower company that's building, that's Tillman Infrastructure, and discussed a little bit there what standards they're meeting. He referenced the national standard to me. Then he also referred me out to someone not related to the project at all, so I could speak to someone who was, maybe didn't have a horse in the race, so to speak. I spoke to someone that's been designing towers and especially grounding systems for towers for quite a few years. He's a 75-year-old guy that kind of dabbles in it a little bit yet. And he had indicated a couple things that are, I think, noteworthy. First of all, the other existing tower there kind of helps, he might say, clear the air for this tower, as though he put it. It kind of grounds the air. And then he noted that Verizon historically has had a very good record of doing what's called ground resistance testing, and that's a way to try to make sure you're designing your ground system to match the soils that you're in. He also indicated that the soils that they're in that location is particularly good, so you typically would have struggles maybe grounding well in a sandier soil, which of course we know much about Holland Township, not a sandier soil condition, more of a clay soil. Wetter, heavier soil that tends to conduct electricity and ground really quite well. So then I also lastly did speak with Doug Dietz, who has for many years been a tower contractor throughout the state, locally and more broadly, I think regionally. And Doug indicated that he did not see concerns with modern tower grounding as far as, having negative impact to people nearby. You tend to see them located in pretty metropolitan areas a lot of times now, including some that we see right here in the city of Willmar. So with that little bit of extra background there, the staff does recommend that the board also adopt the recommendation of the Planning Commission to approve the request. The findings are, you see there are no proposed conditions for this tower.
So you've heard staff recommendation on the Tillman request for a tower construction. I'd entertain a motion to approve this as presented.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the application as presented with the findings as stated herein.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any more questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The next request is a request of Tepe Tonka Club LLC. This proposal is for a hospitality center. The nature of the proposal is for an 8 bedroom or 8 suite type of unit where people will come in, people will stay, relating to activities on the site. Our ordinance does allow for a certain amount of lodging on site that isn't open to the general public. It's not something where someone can go on hotels.com and order up a room, but it has to be specifically for people that come to a property and do activities that are related to that site and permitted on that site. Obviously, this is a golf facility. This would be the main activity. There's obviously some other activities related around that. We know there's some food service for members, etc. So those types of activities would be served by this facility and the guests staying there. I want to highlight in particular one of the conditions as I make a recommendation of approval, conditions 1 through 3. You'll note there's condition number 2. There's talk of sewage treatment needs there being met on site or other approved means. There has been some background talk a little bit about extension of public sewer, and I'm understanding that the Glacial Lakes is doing some background work to even see on feasibility of some broader extension regionally that direction. But a note on the sewage treatment system itself, there is currently a design in our office that is capable of handling the flow from this. And something interesting about this type of system, it handles quite a bit of flow, so it serves all the other cabins that would be lodging there, the restaurant, any of those facilities on that side of the stream, and designed for about 8,300 gallons. And one of the things that comes into play with a system like that is a nitrogen standard. So on your average household system out in the country today, we don't have a standard for nitrogen. We're generally treating for disease-causing organisms. And we get some phosphorus attenuation in the soil. We get a little bit of nitrogen treatment, but not necessarily a lot. A feature of a larger system like this is once you get over 2,500 gallons per day, now you're held to a nitrogen standard. And so it actually ends up being a more robust system in many ways than it's got a more stringent standard that it's treated to than the average homeowner system out there. So something kind of interesting to note for that sewage treatment system proposed to serve this facility as well as the rest of the facilities there. So unless there are any other questions, staff does recommend approval with the 3 conditions as you see, and the findings that's contained in the minutes.
So you've heard staff recommendation on the application by Tepetonka Golf Club for this conditional use permit. It's a conditional use permit.
That's correct.
I'd entertain a motion for approval of this request.
Mr. Chair, I so move to approve this with the conditions and findings as stated.
Commissioner Berg moves on the request with conditions and findings. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any comments or questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Anderson.
Just kind of a broad statement. I mean, I know there's been concern, and I know it's in the conditions that it can't be used as a hotel or motel, but I just want to make, if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, it's just something that's been brought up and is one of the big concerns is that it's just a miniature hotel. And I know that it was talked about at the planning and zoning meeting very in-depth way too, but if you just don't mind elaborating on that a little bit.
Certainly. So a couple things to note about that. When the hospitality event center language was put in, the goal was, so one of the original thoughts was around something, say, as a wedding venue. And we have one of those right in our county that's pretty popular. And sometimes venues like that already have a permitted use, they may have need or desire to have people stay in association with an event right there. So maybe a wedding party might want to stay. You might want to provide those types of things. The goal is not to say that someone's traveling through the county and they need a place to lay their head, or they're coming here for tourism. They need to just generally have a place. So in the ordinance, it does specifically prohibit use as a hotel motel. The condition also then limits them just to make that very explicit that it's not for the general public. It's only for things associated with that use on site. And in this particular case, one can imagine this type of golf course, it serves a little different purpose in the overall golf industry. It's not your local golf club that the majority of the members are coming in, in a 30-mile radius or something, and they drive there from their home, they go home. It's by nature as a destination golf course, it has a need associated with it with, okay, somebody comes from somewhere, they come here, they're going to spend a couple days enjoying themselves, and to have that place to be able to stay on site, enjoy that overall experience on site. That's kind of how that's fashioned. So yeah, it would not be open. Again, you couldn't go on hotels.com or Trivago or those type of booking places and find it and rent it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just as a comment, this is not necessarily new to the board. As part of this plan, if I recall, it was discussed as a possibility, but not approved. Has this location changed at all from the original?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Berg. The concept of a level of maybe lodge style housing has been included from the earliest iterations. I would say it was included in the environmental document that you all looked at and approved. It has been mainly conceptual till it got really fleshed out. So yeah, there have been a few different ideas about where it might be located, how it might be, or actually in the environmental review, it was actually quite a bit higher number. It had proposed or was thrown out as a possibility of up to 25 rooms with double occupancy at that point. And it's significantly lower here as 8 rooms with double occupancy. And the proposers have also at different times in their testimony at public hearings brought it up in the interest of talking about their broader vision, but it never came up as under a specific plan until now.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Third request then, we have some broadly diversified requests here today, and this one is for a what's considered an agricultural processing facility, and specifically a small-scale slaughterhouse. This is Benjamin Ferrier and his wife Tiffany run a small goat herd up near Howick, just off of north of the newly expanded Highway 23 at County Road 2, and they for quite some time have kind of worked themselves into the broader Somali community, both in St. Cloud and locally here in Wilmer. And they started working with a slaughterhouse on halal meats. That's a particular cultural and religious way in which animals are handled, and both pre-slaughter and during slaughter, and then also at post-slaughter. You might think, something along the lines of kosher, similar type of restriction on how that occurs. And over time, they decided that the best way to serve their customer base is to actually kind of be start to finish themselves. Raise the goats, their customers know how the goats are handled. They develop a level of trust with their customers. And so they're proposing a small scale. The structure itself would be about 30 by 30. Their wastewater would all be handled in complete containment and then disposed of according to MPCA guidelines. And so the staff does also recommend the approval of this as per the recommendation of the Planning Commission with one proposed condition and the findings as you see.
So you've heard staff recommendation on the third request of the day for a meat processing plant. I'd entertain a motion for that request.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Dale Anderson seconds. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, go ahead.
Oh, I just a comment. This is an interesting addition to our businesses and our community, and I am also supportive of this. It's very, very good movement.
Anything else? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Van Dyken. All right, so the next item on our agenda, the final item, regular item, is the cannabis ordinance, discussion.
Kelsey Baker, Candioi County Administrator. Before you today, as it's stated in your background information included in your board packet, we are looking for some feedback and guidance of where the board is coming in at. If they wish to do a cannabis ordinance, if you do not wish to, I put a couple questions included in the board packet for today's discussion that maybe might spur some questions or comments that you may have. because we're not in a time crunch, I wouldn't say, but if the board wishes to do something prior to January 1, I want to allow enough time for staff to put an ordinance together, if that's what the board chooses. And then we have to have time in there for public comment and then final approval prior to January 1. So I've also put in some documents as well that lay out some good Q&As, frequently asked questions. There's a guideline in there from the Association of Minnesota Counties. This topic has been discussed at a couple conferences that you all have attended. I know that some commissioners are involved in discussions already regarding public health or maybe the Drug-Free Coalition committee. And so some of the questions that the staff and I are looking for some feedback is, what problem are we addressing? Do you want to, what are you trying to accomplish in this ordinance? Setbacks, different things like that we can include in the zoning ordinance, modify language that we could include in the cannabis ordinance. Do you want to limit the number of licenses that you allow in the county? You as the board have that authority to do so, but that has to be done by January 1, 2025. What will the retail registration process be? The state, the Office of Cannabis Management does the licensing. The county does the registration. So some counties have that ran through admin, sheriff's office, county attorney's office. That's something maybe more that when we kind of work out some of these details, that we will fine tune what that process would be. I don't think we want to put everything into an ordinance. I don't think that's where the staff or myself are coming in at. We want to be able to put an ordinance together, maybe if it's limiting the registrations, or the retail businesses, excuse me, and then seeing what changes come from the state. I know there's a lot of discrepancies that our county attorney is looking into. There's issues that OCM, Office of Cannabis Management, is still looking into and trying to find guidance and policy. And so I would say there's some direction. There's some authority that counties have right now prior to January 1. And so I think today it's more or less just I would be looking for an open forum. What questions do board members have? What are their wishes? What's your intent if you want the staff to move forward with an ordinance? One county just did a resolution limiting the number of businesses, and that is sufficient enough prior to January 1. And so the staff and I have looked at many different options. I just wanted to have this discussion more or less with the county board to see where you're all coming in at so that we can do our best work in the limited time that we may have prior to January 1. And so that I know some counties are discussing a cannabis ordinance at their board meetings today. Some counties have already passed an ordinance. I feel that in discussion with the staff, we have all wanted to just wait and continue to pulse the situation because we don't want to act too quickly. Because the state is, like I said, they're changing things daily. We're looking for clarification, but yet I don't want the county to be behind the 8 ball. And so I just really wanted to pose some of these questions to the commissioners today, in hopes to provide some guidance for the staff, and able to get something accomplished within that time frame.
Thank you. So purpose is to gather feedback, and so that's what I'm going to suggest that we do for Commissioner Dwayne Anderson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm on the Drug-Free Coalition, and they've been pretty anxious that the board would do something, so that we have some sort of guidance in the county. The state laws are kind of confusing, and that's kind of putting it mildly. But it would be nice if we could just maybe kind of have a way so that we could kind of tap the brakes a little bit and just kind of go, let's hold back a little bit. Maybe we could put a resolution together that would limit it to maybe 1 per 12,500 population, which would give us about 4, I believe, in countywide. But we also understand that cities that have ordinances and a planning and zoning type of committee, that they can set their own type of limits as well. But I think at this point, since since if we don't do anything, I don't think we're allowed to do anything after January 1st, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think I would like to see that we would err on the side of caution, and then maybe later we could address it again, and then, go from there as what we should or could do. That's just my opinion right now, but the Drug Free Coalition would like us to do some restrictions because cannabis isn't how most people would think of it. It can come in the form of gummy bears, other types of candy, brownies, and it's even found in they can even put it in things like beverages that parent maybe wouldn't even know that they might think it's a can of pop or whatever, or somebody might think it might be an alcoholic beverage and not know what they're really drinking unless they look a little closer. So I think we should err on the side of caution on this here, and later when we get a chance to really look at things, maybe we could make some changes in the future.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Anderson correctly notes that we need to do something before the end of the year. Otherwise, we essentially lose our ability to work on this to regulate cannabis within the county. I was at the State Community Health Services Advisory Committee retreat for 2 days last week. Every county represented there is or has been or is currently working on a cannabis ordinance, and this is a public safety, public health issue, I think, first and foremost. We have, as the county is this board is the public health authority for the county, and so it's really incumbent upon us to be able to address it from that perspective, regulating things like time, place, manner, in terms of where businesses are allowed, where cannabis may or may not be used in public, regulating that public use. Those are certainly things that we should be looking at, protecting people from secondhand smoke, regulating the accessibility of these products, very similar to what we currently do for tobacco and alcohol. Zoning certainly is going to play a key in that. I'm a little ambivalent at this point in terms of specifically how many licenses we should allow. We have to, by statute, allow 4 due to our population. But we can do more, we can do less. But the thing I would not be in favor of is just letting the market decide. I don't think Kandiyohi County wants us to have a free-for-all, an unlimited approval approach to licenses. I'm thinking of some of our smaller communities that are pretty conservative that are probably not going to want to do any more than is absolutely necessary. And we do have to partner with the other local units of government on this. City of Wilmer, for example, might want to allow a number of businesses. They would, by their population, have to allow at least 2 if they want to do their own ordinance. We have townships that maybe want to just cede the authority over to the county. We might have other cities that want to draft their own ordinance. So we need to be visiting with them. This is complicated. And so hopefully we can come up to a good workable ordinance. I think that it's fine if we touch on things at a slightly higher level. We can, as long as we're covering the basis on those items that I mentioned, as well as planning and zoning and where we're going to allow these businesses to be located. I think that's really going to be key. I know that the OCM is struggling to put things together in a cohesive manner. They're still trying to get fully staffed. Ordinances can certainly be amended, but we need to do something, and we need to do something now before the end of the year. As far as the registration process concerned, as Administrator Baker noted, we can. That's probably a conversation that's best handled at the staff level. I know that we have to carry out inspections, not inspections, but what's the word I'm looking for? The compliance checks. And that's something that we have to do by statute. So, I think Corinne's department over at Public Health would be able to take care of that piece of it, but that's what they have capacity for. So we need to figure out what the remaining capacity is on registration, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Commissioner Bird.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, Administrator Baker, for bringing this forward. I also agree that I think we need to look at this seriously moving forward. I'm thinking that this is a very important ordinance that we're going to have. And I really think the county board has to have its fingerprints on this, involved in this, and having some work sessions. And again, there's not a whole lot of time. And maybe the work sessions don't have to be that involved, but we do need this involvement. And I would like to hear back from, the sheriff, the police department directly, actually, maybe at a work session. And I'd also like to get some more public input into this too, to see what they're thinking as well. And in the cities, as was mentioned, it's really important that somebody could be actually at this one of our work sessions just from the city, but also behind the scenes. I think that's the administrator and the staffs to try to put this together and pull this together for us. And I would really appreciate an example and maybe an example of one eventually. But I think there's a process to go through. But I would like to see information, if possible, from other cities that have done it, other counties have done it so far. So we got kind of a template that we can say, we look at this, that's what you presented. So that's basically my input. I do think, though, that I would like to see it limited to 4. And I think we don't need, and again, this would be part of the discussion going down the road, that supply and demand, and I think 1 or 2 businesses will probably be the main when it comes right down to it. But I think we should start out with 4. But that's just my opinion at this point. And I'd like to have further conversation as well.
Commissioner Dale Anderson.
Well, I'm going to use Roger's comments. Nice to not be first in the conversation because I agree with everything everybody has said. My biggest concern is if we don't do anything, then we're going to have to grandfather somebody in, or it gets to be that issue. So I agree with everybody saying that we need to do something. We can always change it later, and I think that's the biggest thing. But I think if we don't do anything, then we're really not sending the right message either. And I think that's the important thing. I guess maybe I'm a little bit torn on the whole issue. I don't really care what anybody does in their own place and their own business, but I get really concerned with what Steve brought up of secondhand smoke and out in public situations. I guess that's my biggest concern. I'll just use an example. We stayed at a hotel down in Minneapolis for my brother's wedding reception, and it was so putrid, the smell in that hotel, that you could hardly stand to walk the halls. And I guess that's the concern part that I have, is going to an event or going to a function and having that secondhand smoke effect is probably my biggest concern. But I agree with everything that's been said. I think we need to do something, and I think we need to try and get something put together, whether it's a resolution or an ordinance. I guess I'm open either way. But I'm going to give it back to staff. I think that it's staff's job to kind of put this together and look at examples from other places that have been looking at it and come up with something that you can bring back to the board.
Follow up. So did you?
No, I'm done.
So I would I'd agree with much of what's been said, but I'm going to go back to a little bit to several months ago when we talked about many of the things that we have to consider here, where you can retail, where you can grow, where you can use, and using is probably one that's we think about the most. But many of our ordinances already allow for where you can use. You can't. We have Clean Door, Minnesota Indoor Air Act. We have an ordinance that you can't smoke within 25 feet of a doorway of a business that does food. So I don't want to rush into something that uh, where we duplicate what's already on board, because these ordinances have to be carried out once they're passed and enforced. And so I tend to agree with Dwayne that we go the resolution route. And I know we're not making a decision today, but that we go a resolution route so that we keep our options open and I think Commissioner Gardner stated that it's still a fluid discussion even at the Office of Cannabis Management. We don't know all the rules yet, but if we do the resolution, and then as some of these other ordinances start coming in, we don't need to invent our own wheel. If there's others that want to do the work before us, and there's others that are further down the road that we have, then we can look at some options and say, okay, I like what they do, maybe I don't like what they do, and have that conversation in a work session. But for now, I would lean strongly towards, let's not rush into an ordinance, but let's keep our options open by doing a resolution. So, Dwayne.
Yeah, so
Commissioner
my question would be, if we do a resolution or an ordinance, are we restricted then afterwards? Or, I mean, if we just do a resolution, are we restricted so that we can't do an ordinance later? Or if we, I mean, are we hurting ourselves if we just do a resolution, or should we do an ordinance?
I would maybe lean to our county attorney.
No, if we do those things, we can always go back and do things. I mean, if it's an ordinance, you'd have to amend an ordinance, you have to go through the same process as passing an ordinance. That'd be the certain days for posting, public hearing, that kind of thing, but you can still change.
So one of the things you asked for is feedback, and you're certainly getting it. But at the AMC Fall Policy Conference in Alexandria a month ago, about now, they provided us with the cannabis retail registration decision tree. Now I know that only addresses retail, but I think that's the one biggest on everybody's mind, or top of mind. There was a decision tree there. Maybe that, along with allowing us to take a look at I think you cited maybe one resolution, or is there more resolutions that?
Ones I've at least seen in Clay County, they have two, one's more on use in public plus the retail. Aiken has the resolutions on the registrations. Roseau County has, I guess, an abridged retail ordinance for the ones I've seen directly.
So maybe the next step would be to provide us with those examples of resolutions, and then the other issue about going down a road, starting down the road only to find out that we have to back up because Spicer wants to do their own, or Wilmer's wants to do their own. Maybe we do that step first, that decision tree, and perhaps we give the local units of government a deadline for giving us a yes or a no. If it doesn't come by a certain deadline, it's a no. So then we know to go forward. Doesn't make any sense, I don't think, for us to start work on an ordinance and then only to find out that Wilmer's going to do their own, which So the decision tree that we got, I think, would be nice to get the LGUs to say, local government units to say, yes, you do it for us, or no, we kind of want to keep this in-house.
So I think what I'm hearing based off my notes, we do have 3 commissioners that are looking at a full ordinance. Some are we have 2 that are in favor of a resolution. I think I'll take that back with staff. I think the work sessions, Commissioner Berg, that you brought up, my only fear is that it is so tough to get everybody in on the same page. I can talk about that with staff. We could look at some dates within the next, from today until the end of the year. I'll look into more of the resolutions. I think this is good feedback. Am I missing anything from staff? Are there any questions? I've had some staff sitting here. But absolutely, we can hear from our sheriff regarding kind of his thoughts. We can reach out to more staff at the Drug Free Coalition. I know our public health has been involved with it. Caroline's had conversations with staff. So what we'll continue doing is we can provide maybe some example ordinances and a resolution at our next board meeting. We have one extra week now in between today and November 5th. So we have some time to maybe provide some examples and some language. I know the other thing is, how many businesses we allow, the smell, the odor, some of that information is already touched in the zoning ordinance. And so thank you for the feedback today. If you do have any follow-up questions or comments, questions, please let me know. And then I can funnel that information out to our staff that are working on this.
Okay. I guess go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kelsey, we would also be looking at a public hearing at some point in time in this process, yes?
Yes.
So that folks can come in and give us their feedback, and for anybody who's watching this or is going to read about it, they should, of course, certainly reach out to us with their thoughts on whatever side of the issue they fall.
And I did send an email to the cities. No city has taken any action at this point. Spicer does have an ordinance. They're going to have to remodify that and add some different language. The city of Wilmer is working on something, but it's very preliminary. So I'll continue those conversations as well with the cities and townships.
Commissioner Anderson.
So I just want to make a comment. We basically we just have 4 board meetings left in the year, so it is a little bit urgent at this time.
Commissioner Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really would like to leave this up to staff and the staff bring it to us, but as the board is the policy setters. And as policy setters, our job is not to say, hey, do this, bring it, and I can vote for this. And we do need to be involved in this, but I think, and I want the staff involved because us going forward, it's a very complicated process. And I do value the input from the staff as much as possible. And even examples would be just wonderful, but I think we have to put our fingerprints on this going forward. I'm also open to part of this work session. I think we need it as soon as possible so the staff can proceed with this, and then maybe we could have a shorter follow-up one on that. But going forward, I would. I guess I'd like to address these issues a little bit more. I'd be open to looking and even talking some more about either a resolution versus the ordinance.
Yeah, I wasn't as clear as you were on the divide between resolution versus ordinance. And to Commissioner Dwayne Anderson's point about the fairly limited amount of time, as I think about my time on the board here, and Mr. Gear who's sitting in the audience might clarify this, but it feels to me like the last ordinance or amendment to an ordinance we did was the smoking within a certain number of feet of the doorway. That was an amendment a number of years ago to change that from like 10 feet to 25 feet or something like that. So I'm not sure that any of us have ever gone through a full ordinance process. And it's not, I think Gary will agree with me, it's not a 10-minute presentation. There's a public policy, there's notices. And so that's where I'm going to strongly come down on the side of a resolution, so we don't rush into something and then make some mistakes or have to go back and do another amendment. I guess until we get more direction from the state and more examples across the state, that we keep our options open through a resolution as opposed to trying to rush an ordinance through by January 1st.
Absolutely. I can go back and look to see what the process was with the tobacco ordinance, if you did a work session or what that process was and the involvement. I can go back and look at that.
And I think, Gary, there is a process. There are steps to take for passing an ordinance. You got to create the language. You got to decide within that ordinance. I mean, there's a lot of questions.
Absolutely, and I
who
understand.
enforces, who inspects, there's a lot of questions there. And do we have the staff to do it? If we don't, is it in the budget? So I would recommend we don't rush in. Commissioner Dale Anderson.
So just a question on that then, Roger. If we don't do an ordinance before the first of the year, are we still allowed to? Because I mean, what I was hearing right away when we first started talking, if we don't do something by the end of the year, we can't do it. So do we have to have something done by then if we're going to do it?
Well, you asked me the question, and I'm probably not the one to answer. What I understood is that the resolution essentially bought us time.
Okay.
That we don't have to have the ordinance in. Mr. Baker, can you clarify that? for us?
Not very well, because to point out, the law is not very clear on what's been provided, and the state hasn't been really stepping up to deal with it.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
But it's what Mr. Anderson brought up before about once you get past that date, certainly if the businesses start propping up and you haven't had locations, then
You lose that
deal with-
authority.
Right.
deal with the fact that they're already there.
So then my follow-up is, and if that's the situation, and according to what Shane is saying, then we need to do an ordinance, whether we change the ordinance later or not. We need to get something in an ordinance, otherwise we're basically stuck that we'll never be able to make that ordinance.
So if I recall from the beginning of the conversation, the resolution considered and addressed number of, you could, through the resolution, already set the number of retail or outlets that you'd have. So some of those things you could do through a resolution without getting into all the detail of who enforces and who does all of that work. Commissioner Burke.
Well, thank you. Also, I'd like to hear back from the EDC or Candido County Economic Development Commission of what they have for recommendations or ideas, as well as our local chambers. How they feel about it.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Dale. The details matter. I think this is far too complex a topic to simply leave up to a resolution. We know that the state is having difficulty with this, but I don't think we let their difficulties guide us, and we just say, well, we'll see what happens when they get their ducks in a row. They might get their ducks in a row and say, okay, that's it. Now you can't. Now we're just going to go with what you already have. And I think we should err on the side of caution, and we should definitely go the ordinance route. It's not that, again, as you said, we don't need to necessarily reinvent the wheel. Ordinances change all the time. I've been through that in my time on the Wilmer City Council. It's not an impossible task. So, it's just something that we might have to do later, but I think we'd better have something on the books now that's much more comprehensive than what a resolution would be.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this possibly something that we can proceed? First off, I'm thinking the board at this point is not quite ready to make that decision if we do an ordinance or a resolution. And we proceed with both options at the same time? And would that be very complicated to do, to see what other information comes up in this next month as what is better or not better route to go?
Good question. And a question was addressed to EDC regarding the EDC earlier, and I see Mr. O'Rourke in the back of the room, so I'm going to ask you to come to the podium, and I see your hand is up and you have something.
I just wanted to make one comment. I did actually.
Could you,
I'm sorry.
for the record, state your name?
Yeah,
and
Patrick O'Rourke, Executive Director of Candido County Economic Development. I just wanted to point out one thing. I did read the regulations regarding this, and I actually, when I was in California serving on a city council, we had the choice from a locality to restrict it, which you don't have here because you have to have so many per population. But you can, I did read at the county level, if you chose the four, that you could have four, it would enable your cities that are maybe more conservative throughout the county to make the decision not to have another license in their area. So that's one thing by actually making that decision as far as limiting the number of retail outlets. It would enable you then to say, hey, or it would enable Regal or Sunberg or any other small town to say, hey, there's already four that's authorized. We're not going to authorize one here. So that's a thing to keep in mind, I think.
It's a good point. It probably went to stop Georgeville in 1970, though, just so you know. I just want to make a comment, and it seems clear to me from this robust discussion that we're having that there's still a lot of questions. And Regarding work sessions, I don't think any of us are scared. We got elected to do this job, and to do a work session because we still don't have all the answers, I don't think is a bad thing. We'll work out the schedule. It doesn't have to be the first or the third Tuesday. We are getting to the end of the year, but I'm sure that we can carve out some time where we can do a work session to further flesh this out.
Yep.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Could we get a recommendation by our next meeting whether or not we should do a resolution or do an ordinance? If there's, or maybe the pros and cons.
I think so. Yeah, and we'll talk as staff here in the next 2 days, and we'll be able to provide a more formal recommendation based off the conversation and feedback today.
Thank you. And Mr. Van Dyke, and you were at the podium, and I
Yes.
didn't mean to chase it away, but Mr. O'Rourke was really anxious to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric Van Dyke, County Zoning Administrator. I just wanted to maybe provide a little bit of clarity on the land use or zoning side. We are prepared at this time to answer and spot the various levels of cannabis industry. So there are 3 different categories they fall into. They fall into cultivation, which for us is an agricultural use. So we will be able to cite these and approve them when the state starts to license them and the registration program comes online at the county, and they come to the zoning office and say, I want to start business XYZ. We do have a place to put them in, and our ordinance can handle that on the cultivation side. The next level would be manufacture, and for us, that would be in our commercial industrial zone under manufacturing. And so the last would be retail then, and then we do have a category for that as well. So we are situated right now. We're not in a bad spot to say we know where we would place these 3 types of businesses. Retail around that is similar to retail around a lot of other things. We see tobacco sold, we see alcohol sold in different places under that retail moniker. In the county, that's going to be somewhat naturally limited because we don't proliferate a ton of commercial zones. Our comprehensive land use plan steers us in that direction. We tend to steer commercial more toward municipalities, and in particular, our larger municipalities. They have infrastructure that meets those needs more, especially around manufacturing. What you'll find is that wastewater is a pretty big challenge for them. So it does mean that locating in county commercial districts would be much more challenging for them than, say, finding a spot in a commercial district or wherever the city might zone them. So we are prepared for that right now, and we can cite them, and we aren't going to be stuck with saying, throwing our hands up and not knowing what to do. So I just wanted to make sure that on the zoning side is at least out there for you to know.
Thank you.
Could I make another comment?
Go ahead.
So with that, with our Drug Free Coalition, they do on-site inspections for tobacco products. And right now, I think in the county, there's 30-some sites. Is that correct? Or is that with our Drug Free Coalition? Maybe that's the whole area for that. I'm not sure. But
I don't work with the tobacco registration at all.
yeah, so it could end up being quite a few. And I think right now there's about 16 or 19 businesses that would like to retail cannabis products. So that would be coming up.
All right. Very good. Good discussion. Which brings us to the report out. Brings out to our report out segment of our meeting. And so we will begin with the report out. So we'll start with Commissioner Dale Anderson.
Oh boy, this can be short and sweet because I'm actually farming. So I really don't have any meetings that I've been at. I have had a few conversations on the phone with different constituents. Ditch 27 and 29 are a big subject, and that's continuous conversations with people. But that's probably my only thing. I was unable to attend the tourism meeting last Monday. Yeah, just busy farming right now, so sorry about that.
All right, Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have to be in Marshall at 12:30, so I'll keep this brief. We had as I mentioned earlier, the State Community Health Services Advisory Committee retreat was held in St. Cloud last Wednesday and Thursday. Primary topic there was how to message and talk about public health in a way that people are going to be receptive to it. There was a lot of energy spent around that. Attended the ribbon cutting for Highway 23 last Friday. It was good to see a lot of folks there, and we had sat in for a Health and Human Services Committee meeting yesterday and received some pertinent information there. And I'm off to Marshall for a Supporting Hands Nurse Family Partnership Finance Committee meeting. That's it. That's all I got.
All right, Commissioner Berg.
Yes, I had several meetings. I had a meeting at Historical Society, just going over some of the prints and looking at some of that for the law library, and they're completed and they're ready to be put up and hung. Maybe they're up already. I don't know. Also, I had took part in a Public Works United Way fundraiser, and I only took out one mailbox, I think. So, but I felt good about it, making a nice donation there, and that was fun. I also had a Woodlands Center's Mental Health Center retreat I attended to that morning. And then on the 7th, I attended the AMC Zoom meeting on taxes and evaluations, and that was very educational, very well done. And we all been on the road bridge tour that took a big part of the day, and that was really excellent. Actually, one of the things we talked about today, we saw firsthand as well. So that was very helpful, very well done. I attended that same day the advisory committee for community corrections. And also I met the next day at PAC 4 for Families with the vice chair. I'm the current chair, going over some of the bylaws and making some possible plans for the next big meeting we have next month. I attended the PAC 4 meeting the following day, and that was in Meeker County as well. And it was a very important meeting that we talked about some legislative things and working legislatively as a collaborative on some of the issues with health and human services and the schools going forward and being involved in what everybody's doing. And they also invited several elected officials that do legislation, and they attended that meeting. It was a good meeting. We had the EDC Joint Ops. I'm the liaison member of that, and it was a very good meeting. Well done in the new place, and it was fantastic. And I had a tour of it, and it's going to work out really well there. It's moving in the right direction. And then Friday the 11th, or last Friday, I had the 18 county mental health consortium meeting. And this is probably the biggest thing I'd like to report back on, and it's going to be pretty short. It was practically an all-day meeting, but we're redoing the joint powers there, and it takes time. And we're getting close, but you get 18 counties to get their joint powers together. There was one or two or three counties that hadn't gotten it back yet from their county attorneys. So we are going to have to postpone that for one more month, but we have to do something by the first of the year because of the cash flow. And several counties don't want to make a decision of helping put money in to help with the cash flow until we get the joint powers done. So we'll be able to move on that. I feel really positive. Corinne Torkelson, supervisor, was there as well as Caroline Chang, and she was there representing our county. And I want to just share that Corinne Torkelson, this was her last meeting, and she had hoped to have this all done, but we felt that we were close enough, and we had a nice birthday thank you for her and for her services there. So we're going forward. I think we can get it completed, and I'm looking forward to our meeting. And then as an organization, the county commissioners will be electing a chair and vice chair as well. And that is the extent of mine.
Thank you, Commissioner Berg. Commissioner Dwayne Anderson.
Okay, so I had 5 meetings that I went to, or 4 meetings and then 1 fun event, I guess I would say. I did the road and bridge tour that we talked about already. One of the interesting things about that was I got to see where the Green Lake outlet is, and that was kind of interesting and a little fun information for me, and find out things that you don't know about in the county. And Canada County is really an amazing county if you really start digging in and looking at all the different places to go. From that, I guess I went broadband meeting. At the point when we had that, there really wasn't much to discuss because we didn't know about our grant awards, and then a lot of the projects that are going on currently in the county are pretty much wrapping up. But then a day or two later, we found out that 2 townships in my district were awarded grants for broadband, and so it'd be Genesee Township and Candy Ojai Township. The total grant amount was $1.4 million. So that's very significant in our county, and it's going to move our county a little bit forward as far as fiber to the premise or fiber to the homes. I think it's going to be about 355 locations that will be able to have access to high-speed internet now, which is really great. And so in the last 4 years, in just my district alone, we went from basically nobody having fiber to the home or fiber to the business or premise to now a population that'll cover about 6,100 people. So it's really great. And that's just in my district. So our county has made significant strides in the last 4 years, which is really good to hear. The problem is going forward after our ARPA dollars dry up, how do we proceed in the future? And so that we'll have to figure out in the next meetings to come as far as our broadband committee. Then last Friday I did bingo with the board. That was kind of fun to meet some of our staff and find out who was really good at playing bingo. And there was one individual who she won 3 times, and didn't matter what card I handed her, she still would win. So that was it was a fun event. So kind of a lighthearted thing to do with and to meet staff. I also did the Vision 2040 meeting. That was pretty much a routine meeting. And then coming up, we'll have I have a drug-free coalition meeting on October 23rd, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of discussion then as how they would like to proceed with the county, if we should do an ordinance or resolution, and kind of some ideas that they might have, and they can maybe give their input to the administrator here, and it can be presented then maybe at our next board meeting. So.
Thank you. Administrator Baker.
I just have a few things. If you would like to do a work session, then after the November 5th meeting, I would request that you come with some dates. Because then we would be on a very short time frame to get something.
I might suggest you use the Survey Monkey sent out to us that allows us
You
to
mean
pick
the
a-
doodle one?
or doodle, yeah, doodle.
Um,
Whatever it's called.
Sure. And then, so with the Prairie Lakes Youth Program, with the federal lobbyist group, with the fire with the building, we've had conversations, and doing some lobbying work out in DC with some of our partners. And so we'll have a call here next week, with Commissioner M. Dyke and Gardner that sit on that, and looping in Holly Booth, the executive director at Prairie Lakes, to finalize maybe a visit in November. I will also be full-time officing, not full-time, but more consistently out of the COB, our downtown office. It just comes with a good time with elections and different things like that, lots of changes. And I believe that's it.
May I just follow up with a question? Is Commissioner Runnigan, is he going to be going to?
I don't know that for sure yet.
Is that a possibility though?
I think so, but I don't know what the update. I'll find out more next week.
Right, I'll know more tomorrow.
All right, well, thank you. As you know, I wasn't hitting on all 8 cylinders last meeting, and at that morning I didn't want to risk exposing anybody, and it turns out I did not test positive. It was simply a little bit too much celebrating at my daughter's wedding 3 days earlier, so I just had some more throat issues and just plain old laryngitis. And so then I was a little out of commission last week as I had some some framework done at a body shop in Mayo, and then, but I was able to, before I left on the 3rd of October, I was, the Minnesota State Association of County uh, Administrators had their annual meeting at the conference center here in Wilmer, and so I was able to give a welcome and sit in on part of their meeting for a little bit, which was pretty interesting. It had a nice turnout over there. And then I took part in a couple of Zoom meetings last week. Was able to, with help, get to the ribbon cutting ceremony out on Highway 23, which was really exciting to see that come to fruition. And then yesterday afternoon, I attended the ribbon cutting and open house at the KCED new offices, which was, I'm really looking forward to that new space. And I learned that our next EDC broadband committee, or probably future ones, will be at those offices rather than in this building, which will be nice. And then a couple of things regarding on the 25th of October is the District 6 meeting in Chippewa County, is in Montevideo. And then we'll probably get back just about in time for Corinne's retirement party downstairs, I assume. So anyway, that goes on the 25th. And then, you know, a few months ago, it's getting to be a few months ago now, we had some board governance training work with Dave Unbach, and one of the recommendations that came out of that was for us to consider adopting board operation guidelines, which I think is not only important for existing board members, but even more critical for people who are coming on the board who don't really know how this process works. It's similar to other elected boards like county township officers or school board members, but there are going to be some unique things related to being a county commissioner. Very fortunately, there are a lot of examples already in place of counties that have board operating guidelines. So we're not in the same spot that we are with cannabis considerations. And I would like to maybe at the same work session that we put together for the cannabis discussion, that we just dig in and do a little extra work, and also look at some opportunities and options for the board operating guidelines. So I know Administrator Baker said there's one in a file here someplace. I don't think anybody's ever seen it, other than maybe a component of it that came out about the time of COVID and remote meetings. But the Association of Minnesota Counties has a toolkit that they've developed with different sections from different areas of the state, which should make this process, if not quick, it'll make it pretty easy, that we can look at elements of a guideline and pick and choose almost cafeteria style which ones would work best for us. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your indulgence. We went overtime probably by a fair amount today, but it was all good discussion. We are adjourned.